and welcome to this session on advancing carbon dioxide removal and Article 6 partnerships for scalable, inclusive, and equitable climate solutions. My name is Liz Nelson, and I'm a member of the Secretariat of the Council of Engineers for the Energy Transition. And on behalf of the SEAT and UNIDO, it's a pleasure to welcome you today to this session. We're also grateful for the collaboration of the UNFCCC and the Global Innovation Hub for hosting this session and helping bring this discussion to life. So COP30 gives us an important moment to discuss how these CDR technologies and approaches can be integrated into Article 6 and the Paris Agreement to support equitable, inclusive, and scalable climate action. So today we'll be looking across the full range of CDR pathways from nature-based solutions, hybrid and engineered, and also consider how these solutions can align with ecosystems and preserve the nature of that we're looking at here at COP. So our goals here today are to highlight responsible, scalable CDR options, discuss integrity, MRV, and identify the policy and market frameworks that are needed to unlock finance and accelerate implementation. So thank you again for joining us. It is now my pleasure to introduce Rana and have her come up to the stage for your opening remarks.
Thanks a lot, Liz, and thanks to all the SEAT members and also to our partners from the government of Brazil and UK for joining the session this morning. So on behalf of the co-hosts of the SEAT, UNIDO and SDSN, I would like to also welcome you to this event today, discussing a very important point in the discussion. Carbon removals are going to be essential as well in moving more towards our climate goals. And if we look at the discussions that are happening now also in the negotiations, I think the carbon removals are also going to be a very important discussion as part of the Article 6 and the carbon markets discussion. So this policy brief and the work that the Council of Engineers has done to really highlight some of the key recommendations on how carbon removals can be, with full integrity and transparency, a key climate solution is going to be very helpful in moving this discussion forward. Now, perhaps I'd like to highlight a couple of points from UNIDO's perspective, because at UNIDO we've been working on this topic, significantly. And for us, I think one key element is that we need to unite around some core principles that define also what transparent and integral carbon removal projects are, and prerequisites as well for their implementation. The second point that I would like to also highlight is, how carbon removals are also featured into carbon accounting methodologies. And, if you look at what is going on at the moment, especially within the action agenda that has been revamped by the government of Brazil, there's one core group that is actually looking at carbon accounting principles and how do we drive more harmonized and also interoperable procedures that support more, clarity and transparency across carbon accounting. And this is going to be a very important element in defining future markets as well. So we need that agreement so that we are comparing things in an equitable way, and that we drive also technology implementation in the right places, leveraging as well not only environmental benefits, but also social benefits, because countries have different starting points as well that will support them also in these technologies implementation. And then the third point is really how do we achieve scale with that? So we certainly need the policy environment, and that's where I was coming from, both on the principles and the accounting standards. But then, we need to look at how do we drive markets, and there again, we need to provide more pilot projects, demonstration projects that show that these technologies work, and also instruments that support pulling these technologies into the market. So from our side, we really also look at green procurement as a way of implementing and supporting the implementation of these technologies, but also we see the potential for carbon markets in further advancing that. I'm sure the seat members have a lot more granularity to add to my statement, but I just wanted to once again welcome the work that has been done within the seat for this, and also to thank all the seat members for their efforts and contributions within the seat to really keep science and engineering at the heart of all of what we do within the energy transition. So thank you so much, and I'll pass to the moderator, Mercedes. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, you can hear me now. So many thanks, Rana, for setting us so well in terms of the coming discussion. I'm Mercedes Maroto-Valer. I'm a member of SEED, and I'm actually based in the UK, where I'm the director and champion of the Industrial Decarbonization Research and Innovation Centre, known as IDRIC, and also deputy principal for global sustainability at Heriot-Watt. So we have 6 panelists today. We're going to go through a series of questions, and then it's going to be also an opportunity for the audience to ask questions. But I would like to do first a brief introduction to my fellow panelists, and then they will have an opportunity as well if they want to add anything else when they answer the questions. So I'm going to start with Dexter Lee, Head of Carbon Markets Negotiation from the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero in the UK. Welcome. Emmy, so I got the names all over now. Emmy Mingugu, who is also a member of SEED, an associate professor at Monash University in Malaysia. Nitin, next to me, Nitin Arora, Program Manager Officer at UNFCCC. Rosana Santos, Executive Director of E+ Energy Transition Institute, based in Brazil. Semida Silveira, professor at Cornell University, and Tiago Barral, all to the right, executive president of the Brazilian Energy Research Office, EPE. I hope I pronounced that right there.
Just let me update, because I just started this week a new position now as Undersecretary for Carbon Market Implementation in Brazil.
Okay, thank you. And just to mention, following up with Rana's words, Rosana, Semida, Emmy, and myself, we are actually members of the SEED Council, so we're really grateful for the opportunity as well to bring an engineering perspective to these discussions. So we're going to start with the questions, but prepare your own questions as well, because there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. The first 2 questions that we have are actually related around implementation. We have heard multiple times, this is the COP of implementation. So we want to kick off precisely with that, with questions about implementation. And I'm going to be asking actually to Dexter and Semida, 1 question to each related to implementation. The first one is over to you, Dexter, around within unlocking investment and the risk in implementation. How can cooperation under the Article 6 can mobilize investment and the risk delivery for countries and project developers?
Thank you. Thank you so much, and an absolute pleasure to be here today. And thank you for the invitation. So maybe just to start in terms of Article 6, I've had the pleasure of the negotiations for the past several years with the UK on this, and it was great news in Baku last year. We've sort of closed the rulebook, and we really are in this era of implementation, as you say. The negotiations have shifted a bit now, with moving to sort of looking at the reports, providing further direction to the supervisory body for the Article 6 work. And you can see, maybe just to summarize this year, the major advances on adopting standards on baselines, on leakage, additionality, non-permanence removals. These are all things that will unlock, the next level of submitting methodologies, both bottom up by stakeholders and also top down by the supervisory body. So we really are in this era of implementation now. And maybe just to note as well, like the UK really does, of course, for our transition to net zero, we will need to counterbalance some residual emissions, and the importance of removals, both engineered and land-based, will be absolutely critical to that. And in our domestic plans, actually, we have ambitions for engineered removals to scale up to 21 megatons in 2035 in our recently published carbon budget delivery plan. And then, of course, looking longer term as well towards 2050 to further scale that up. And I think that I would just maybe say as well, like the sort of theoretical potential of Article 6 is really clear for this. And of course, the sort of classic, if there are cheaper deployment opportunities in different countries, then of course, Article 6 enables that cooperation between different countries to enable the most cost-efficient deployment of different technologies, and also support to activities like land sector removal. So we really do see, particularly the Article 6.4 Paris Agreement crediting mechanism, really seeing that as a technology agnostic framework to enable all these different crediting activities for those countries and partners that want to participate in it. So yeah, I would really say that. And maybe just to turn a bit to what the UK is doing as well beyond that. So currently for our 2030 and 2035 NDCs, which are at 68% and 81% emissions reductions respectively, we don't currently plan to use Article 6. So we're focused on, as I said, sort of that domestic work currently. But of course, when we set future targets, like we have our carbon budget 7, which will be for the 2038 to 2042 period next year. As you can imagine, we'll be having to think long term about this. And we recently had an independent review on greenhouse gas removals by Alan Whitehead. And one of the recommendations in there was about exploring the use of international engagement on the deployment of removals. So these are really sort of provoking questions that I think governments will have to deal with in the coming years. And of course, as we approach 2050 and net zero, so the government will be considering that report and responding in due course to that. Maybe just to like a little bit beyond Article 6 as well, because this is, of course, one means and mechanism to engage and support the deployment of removals. We're doing several other things. So maybe just to note the coalition to grow carbon markets that we launched at London Climate Action Week earlier this year with our partners Singapore and Kenya. And we've also had some founding members, France and Panama, and expanding the membership of that at this COP actually. So real sort of ambition to help provide that direction and certainty to businesses to be investing in high integrity credits, and of course removals which sits within that. So really seeing the need to engage and mobilize private finance in this space is really essential. And I think back home as well, in our domestic compliance market, our UK emissions trading system, we've got plans to integrate removals into that by 2020. By around 2029. So again, sort of looking at different ways that we can, ensure that demand signal for removals is there, particularly for engineered, which are on the sort of the higher cost points at the moment. So, really seeing that compliance market integration being a key mechanism to stimulate demand. And then, of course, in the context of our UK ETS negotiations linking with the EU as well, this is one of the issues that we'll be considering and discussing with them. And maybe just lastly then as well, I would just add the business model for greenhouse gas removals that we have. So this is a contract for differences style arrangement where we seek to sort of provide revenue certainty to some of these more expensive engineered projects, as I say. So if, for example, there will be a sort of strike price that gives confidence that if, for example, a private developer sells things on the market and doesn't quite get that price, then the government can provide a top up. Equally, if the price exceeds that, then the government can recover to that. So this is the really these types of instruments. We're really trying to unlock that private demand and provide certainty to ensure the scale up of removals. And yeah, as you say, like we really are in the era of implementation now, and all these different policy tools and mechanisms, both domestic and international, will be critical to get us there. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Dexter. I think that was really good in terms of getting us started on Article 6 and beyond Article 6 as well. And I think one of the areas when we talk about implementation, I think it's also important to understand that we already have case studies and things are happening on the ground. So this is a question for you, Semida. You can give us some examples, whether they are country or region, where we can really demonstrate the characteristics of these projects and how that can actually help to support the delivery of more CDR projects and in the context of Article 6.
Thank you, Mercedes, and good morning, everyone. Let me start by going to the topic of today, very close to the second part here of our title, the Scalable, Inclusive, and Equitable Climate Solutions. We are not starting from zero. We had the CDM model, and the CDM taught us a lot of things. Taught us methodologies. We know things that worked very well, things that worked less well. And there we were really, it was really learning by doing. But this time it's important we actually package these lessons in models that go far beyond and that are actually scalable. Because in the CDM, what happened, the CDM was created to bring the developing countries into action and ended up actually concentrated very much in just a few countries. And towards the end, the scalability was more in CFCs. And along the road, we were very strongly focused on the mitigation, which is, or the carbon emissions reductions, and that's fine because that's the goal in the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. But we cannot forget about the development dimensions. And while we developed very sophisticated sometimes methodologies, we were not able to solve some key issues related to baselines, etc. So we need to continue working on that, but we also need to do as much effort for the development dimensions. There are some interesting projects and in reforestation, afforestation that have shown how you can work with communities and protect watersheds and really create a revenue flow, a carbon revenue for the community. But let's remember that that funding is not enough to cover all costs of a project. So for example, we had a project, a very successful project in India, the Himachal Pradesh, India, afforestation, reforestation, improvement of watersheds, enhancing livelihoods, making possible for communities to really build their lives and provide ecosystem services. So this is a way of the communities receiving payment for the ecosystem services that they are going to provide. And we have to remember that. But on the partnership, it's essential that we work with models that cover the other costs that are not, the carbon revenues are not covering, and they will not be enough for covering the development processes. Additionally, it would be very important to make sure that we do have the least developing countries contemplated in these partnerships in meaningful ways, both for the carbon removal, but of course for the sustainable development. So I really think that we cannot emphasize enough the need that on the ground it is complex, but you need to work closely with the communities to achieve this eco-service that we are looking for and at the same time bring the development. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sumida. And we have covered with these two questions, the implementation part, or at least we have started addressing it. Something as well that we keep being reminded when we come to COPs as well is collaboration. And the next two questions, what I want to do is to put Article 6 and how that opens opportunities for cooperation within the context of CDR. So I'm going to be asking both to Nitin and Thiago questions within this area. The first one is over to you, Nitin, in terms of why Article 6 cooperation matters for CDR delivery, and really in practical terms, if you could give us some examples of opportunities that we are opening here. Thank you.
Well, Thank you, Mercedes, for asking this question. I'm really pleased to be a part of this panel, and I'm happy to actually co-host this session with CET as leading the work of UN Climate Change Global Innovation here at the Secretariat. You have actually asked a very relevant point, the role of international cooperation that Article 6 opens up. So we all know that in order to meet the targets of the Paris Agreement, we need to have removals. So the removals has been highlighted as in all the 1.5 degree pathways as critical for achieving the Paris Agreement targets. When we look at Article 6, both the elements, voluntary cooperation under 6.2, which allows parties to collaborate amongst each other to meet their NDC targets in a cost-effective way. So it's a in a way, if you look at 6.2, it's allowing opportunity to parties to cooperate with each other to make sure that they meet their NDC targets in a cost-efficient way. And Article 6.4 is allowing parties to have a mechanism to use markets to make sure that they meet those NDC targets in a cost-efficient way, but at the same time allow private investment to flow into CDR technologies to scale up CDR. So from that perspective, I see that Article 6 proving to be an important tool actually to make that happen, to achieve that scalability for CDR technologies, both in NBS as well as engineer technologies. Coming to the perspective of basically the backup now, I mean, like wearing the hat of Secretariat and supporting the work of 6.4 here in the Secretariat. I mean, like you've seen, Flextra has mentioned about that in Baku, CMA has agreed on the principles basically for operationalization of 6.4, and then has asked supervisory body to come up with standards to make the mechanism operational. And that we have seen in the last year that considerable progress has been made by the supervisory body in doing so. We achieved standards related to additionality, baselines, and leakages that allowed PACAM to be implementable at full scale. Very recently at the meeting just before the last meeting, supervisory body adopted the standard for the reversals, which will open the doors for new methodologies to come in place. And then, related to, of course, not just CDR, but of course, with all sort of technologies. And that will again allow Article 6 to be leveraged for more international cooperation. So that's how I see Article 6 is going to make that difference.
Thanks very much, Nitin. And you touched there actually on related about technologies and standards. So we're going to be having some questions on that. So we may want to retake those points as well. Thank you. I'm going to move now to Tiago in terms of cooperation models. If you can maybe just tell us a little bit about what cooperation models we can see under Article 6. And really something about how we can structure them in a way that they're not just models for cooperation, but also that fairness, that just transition, and obviously the environmental responsibility that we have. So over to you, Tiago.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. Thank you for the invitation. Well, I was lucky enough to have the chance to have a conversation recently with some people from the Scientific Council that has been supporting COP30 presidency, and particularly one of the topics has been CDR and the role of it and the importance. And I think it was already spoken, but CDR is critical for two reasons. First of all, for offsetting carbon reductions that we are struggling to achieve in some hard to abate sectors. And second, reducing global temperature from its peak back to 1.5 in case of overshooting. And some of the estimates that we have indicate that we need over about 220 billion tons of CO2 negative emissions for each 0.1 degrees Celsius of overshoot. So that's huge, that's massive. And that means that we will need not only to scale up one of the CDR techniques, but many of them. We need a combination of them. And obviously also if we concentrate on just one specific technique, for example, in terms of reforestation, the amount of land required to achieve that level is also quite a challenge. So that's why we need to diversify the ways we develop these solutions. Now, when it comes to Article 6, as you mentioned, Mercedes, it's about cooperation. And so in that sense, the starting point of this conversation is look at each country's NDCs and see what can we already deliver and do with the existing conditions in terms of the mechanisms that we have. But CDR is particularly challenging in many ways. So that is where Article 6 comes, and particularly Article 6.2. So what we see is that we are starting this discussion in the Brazilian government to understand which technologies, which solutions are will need to cooperate in order to start scaling up. And one of the examples of this is we had many net zero scenarios for Brazil, but also for the world. And bioenergy combined with carbon capture is one of the critical, actually it features very prominently in many of these scenarios. But so far, actually, these technology is not scaled. It's still not affordable. And so we have to try to understand how can we find the right partners, each countries that can collaborate so that we can together scale up these technologies and deliver some cost-efficient CDR solutions. So at this point, we are assessing how to deliver that and which partnerships are the most promising for us to get the cooperation. So get more finance, more risk sharing for this moment of these technologies. So this is where we are, and I think Article 6 can be critical for kickstarting this scaling up movement that we require, and particularly also to diversify the solutions that we are developing.
Many thanks, Tiago. And again, an excellent segue into the next questions, because you have highlighted what pathways or what technologies we may need, the credibility aspects. And that's the questions I want to focus now with Rosanna and with Emmy, and particularly looking at CDR pathways. So we've been talking about CDR, but as you know, there is a number of technologies and pathways in there. So the next two questions, we're going to go deeper into that, and also related to verification aspects and credibility. So the first question is over to you, Emmy, in terms of what do you see as the feasible CDR pathways in the near term? And within that, again, because we are talking about implementation, the word scalability has already been mentioned and is in the title of this session. So with a focus on that, what you see in terms of the most prominent pathways?
Thanks, Mercedes. And yeah, it's a great occasion to be here and to learn from lots of experts, especially on Article 6 as well. Such amazing opportunity to sit on the edge of the most amazing and beautiful carbon sink in the world, and talking about CDR and Article 6 partnership. Yes, so there are a number of technologies, and I personally like to group them into three different type of solutions. First of all is nature-based solutions, and the second is the technology-based solutions, for example, biochar, carbon capture, biomass, carbon capture, direct air capture as well. And of course, the third group is the geochemical-based solutions, for example, the rock weathering, ocean alkalination. So they all have very different features and distinct contexts. And I guess looking into details from the cost perspective, from infrastructure energy requirement perspective, from social economic impact perspective, and also scalability, they are quite different, like Tiago just also mentioned. Almost all the pathway reports to achieve Paris Agreement and achieve net zero globally more or less have one or at least a combination of these carbon removal solutions in those reports. So in terms of cost, I guess reforestation, afforestation has less technological requirements, and the cost in general can be a lot lower, less than maybe 50 or 80 US dollars per ton CO2 removed. And of course, technology-based solutions are more infrastructure intensive, has a huge upfront cost and also an infrastructure requirement. And the geochemical based solutions also quite technology intensive. Of course, one of the key challenge is how to scale it up, and it does require local practice. But also need to scale up to make sure that the technology can become an adequate carbon sink. So each of them have challenges, of course, benefits. For example, reforestation, based on technology requirements, a lot of the communities can just take it up. It's labor intensive, create jobs. But from the other side, it's harder to verify in terms of its carbon removal capability, and also harder to improve some technologies, I guess, as well. For technology-based, it's I guess the investment currently is quite insignificant. I guess the numbers shows that there are about 4.1 billion US dollars invested in the R&D space for carbon removal technology from 2010 to 2022, while comparing other technologies. For example, energy storage received about 58 billion US dollars just in one single year, and of course other solar, clean energy technology, hydrogen, received a significant more amount of investments than the carbon government commitments. Subsidies in some cases as well, and of course private sectors. Encouraging signs, of course, there are from private sectors, particularly venture capitals, to invest in some of the technologies, for example, rock weathering, biomass, carbon capture, but yeah, there are insignificant or inadequate investment in this space compared to others, and yeah, need to significantly be scaled up.
Thank you very much, Amy. And before moving to the question to Rosanna, I just want to remind the audience that I'm going to be opening for questions So if you can please raise your hand afterwards, and we'll just take a couple of questions from the audience, so just to warm you up. So over to you now, Rosanna, and this actually has been something mentioned from Nitin as well as from Tiago, and really all the way, pretty much in all the questions about this credibility, this integrity that we need for CDR, and really to make sure then we have implementation. So what do you think are the most important elements to make sure that we have a credible, the monitoring, reporting, verification, the MRV process?
Hello.
Thank you, Mercedes, for the question. Before I answer, I just want to say how happy I am that Tiago is now our Undersecretary for the carbon market, for the Brazilian carbon market. It's a huge, huge thing for us. Thank you, Tiago, for being there. I think now we have the right person in the right place to have the Brazilian market to go somewhere. So, sorry, Mercedes, I just had to do that. And again, thank you for having me here. This MRV question, I think it's central to, if we are to do CDRs, even Article 6, we have to do that in a very trustworthy basis. So data collection, data storage, how to collect data, especially the small and medium companies, they are not used to that, and we have to have them involved in the process. So I would say, Mercedes, first utmost is capacity building for small and medium companies, and even big companies, to collect the right data, to understand the methodologies, the certification methodologies, the carbon accounting methodologies, because this is not in place and it's not a given. We did an analysis for the steel sector with some of the sub-suppliers of the steel making companies. They have no clue whatsoever what is even carbon market, or even some of them even climate change. No, I mean, it's something that we have to face as it is. We have to have some kind of capacity building all over the globe for all the supply chains that are involved in this certification and carbon accounting. So without that, we don't have CDR or Article 6, nothing is going to actually happen. The second point is something that someone mentioned, I don't recall, is the one that left. It's technology neutrality. So if we are to get this carbon market going in all over the globe, we have to have some kind of technology neutrality, meaning once you do it correctly in terms of carbon accounting, doesn't matter the technology used to get to that emissions reduction. And what we are facing today is a lot of certifications in carbon accounting that are set to promote some technologies and not the others. So this is quite important for the Global South, that we have a very honest conversation on what is green, very transparent conversation in what we are going to accept, and put together something that Rana and the team is doing. The carbon accounting piece of what we are discussing here is key for what we are talking. Going further is on the CDR. As Tiago mentioned, and I fully agree, is we have to have a range of ways of doing CDRs, including something, and going back to carbon accounting, including carbon that is locked in the under the ground by the roots. So we have to have a better understanding on how much carbon we are locking in on the bio-based solutions. This amount is a huge amount of carbon, and it's not very well known. This around the globe is not very well known. I had a conversation with a guy from Embrapa, which is the Brazilian agriculture research company. And even them, they are going from a range from 3 to 30. So I think we have to have an analysis per crop, per type of bioma, and per type of soil. So and this all over the globe. And it's a lot of CDR that is embedded there. I think in the model, the model that you mentioned, some CDR, some carbon capture in the ground was considered, but it's still a gray zone that we have to better, including in terms of MRV. So we have to have a common understanding on that. And on Article 6 itself, I do not really think that we will tackle decreasing any green premium if we don't have a global carbon market somehow. I'm not saying that we will have a global carbon market like tomorrow, but somehow we have to have a way of understanding carbon mitigation. And this has a lot to do also with international and global trade. If we are to go global in terms of green trade, we have also to have this carbon market working so that we can have a common language on what we are trading actually, and what is the value that is embedded. This said, Thiago, I don't think that carbon market alone is the thing that will solve the green premium. It's a combination of things. It's like a brick wall. This is just one of the bricks. The other one is probably incentives. The other one is technology. The other one is final consumer paying a little bit more. And well, it's a bunch of bricks that we have to bridge the gap of the green premium. And I truly believe that if the green premium is too big or too large, society will not buy it, although we are going to chaos, climatic chaos. If the green premium is too big, we are not going to solve our problem. So Article 6 is something that I see as one of the implementation modes that has the most potential to make this international conversation flow.
Many thanks, Rosanna. I think that brought together quite a number of the points that were discussed as well. So thank you. I'm just going to check if there are any questions from the audience. Otherwise, we have other questions. So there is one question there from the audience, please. I don't know if there is any more. If we can get the microphone. If you wouldn't mind, if that's okay to say your name and affiliation, but if you prefer not to, that's fine as well. It's your choice.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Great. So my name is Alyssa. I'm a youth delegate from China, but also I wear another hat as a carbon market researcher specializing in TBS solutions, including biochar, DAX, BACS, so bioenergy with carbon capture storage and direct air capture. My question is about the enablers or accelerators to have CDR and durable CDR in Article 6. Because we already got some solutions for those nature-based solutions, but we haven't seen the involvement of durable CDR now. And I want to ask, what are the opportunities for developers? The difficulty are obvious. You mentioned data, also like carbon accounting part, like we analyze different solutions and we found that every methodology right now in the world carbon market will lead you to different results. And definitely we want more guidance over there. Also the price, the science is evolving. So like we still not mature in a lot of technologies. So things are tricky over there. The decay mode of biochar, every day some scientists will come up with a new model and a new way to assess that. So I want to know that in the current stage, what are the opportunities for developers to develop more projects with higher integrity, and also how they can like actively prepare for participating in the Article 6 market?
Thank you. Thank you. So that's a question on developers. Let me check if there is any other questions from the audience. And if not, I'm going to then look at my panel members here and see who would like to take that question. Do you want, and probably we can have one other answer as well. Yeah.
I'd like to make a comment, but it's more general. I think it's important to remember that CDR is very site-specific. It's not like sometimes when we talk about, oh, there is this technology, and particularly when we talk about carbon capture and storage, as if it is something that you just replicate in the same way. It's not like building a power plant. A power plant can be relatively kind of replicable. from the technology point of view. But CDRs are very site-specific. And being site-specific means you have to understand your surrounding. And that takes time. And that includes what Rosanna pointed out, for example, understanding the water ecosystem, etc. I fear sometimes that when we talk about scalability of CDRs, we end up in this very large expectations about what, let's say, carbon capture and storage can deliver, when they are even the most site-specific, almost, if it's possible to say so. Because but you don't have the development benefits. So bringing the question, the point to the, let's say, afforestation, reforestation, ecosystem services, you have the other dimensions. And it is very important we don't lose the perspective of the development, because this is an opportunity to push for development. We thought, as I mentioned before, CDM was that opportunity. We kind of focused so much on the mitigation part that we kind of didn't have even good methodologies for monitoring the other benefits. So that combination, and when we talk about partnerships, it's not partnerships of in the same sense that we used to do when we created the CDM projects, but much more like the constellation of things that we need to put together. And by the way, some of these big technologies that are mentioned as great answers, they will not, let's say, carbon capture and storage will give at absolute maximum, 10% of the benefit. And the reason is because when you start doing more carbon capture and storage, you will use gas longer or other alternatives longer. And then that you have a rebound effect. So when afforestation, reforestation will have other benefits that broaden, and not to forget, the last but not least, the resilience. Because when you work with the communities on the ecosystem service, you increase the resilience of the community. And that is a major issue. We cannot so strongly focus on carbon removals and carbon mitigation and forget about resilience. So there is here an opportunity to combine those things, and we should keep that in mind whenever we discuss partnerships and monitoring the development ahead for the Paris Agreement. Thank you.
Thanks. And I think maybe, Tiago, you wanted to answer the question as well. I don't know if anybody else wants to add. Okay, so if we pass to Tiago and then Rosanna, and then we move on, if that's okay with the rest of the panelists.
No, it's just that removals are some of the most, are maybe one of the most challenging elements of any carbon market, because the buyer wants to make sure that that carbon is durable. I mean, they want to know that it will be there for at least 100 years. So you just don't buy and deliver the product. You buy and you have to stick to some kind of governance structure to ensure that that is really delivering the results it's meant to deliver. So one way of addressing that for us to scale up the market and get more liquidity in this, we need to better address that issue. And one way of doing it is every removal project, you pick part of the credits and you put in a buffer, kind of to balance, to hedge the loss. But if the credits are poor, the projects are poor, the buffer is also poor. Another way of perhaps addressing that is thinking of a kind of insurance mechanism to have independent assessment on the integrity and facilitate that. But I mean, it's a huge challenge, and I don't think we have the answers, but there has been especially here at COP, I have been in some of very interesting conversations, ingenious solutions to try to address some of the challenges of bringing removals into the carbon. But yeah, we start with a definition that is useful for all these different techniques and solutions. So, you know, removing carbon, a certain amount of carbon with a certain level of certainty for at least 100 years, for example, is a starting point to kind of harmonize all the definitions that work for BECCS or for reforestation or for anything, but it's quite a challenge.
Thank you. And I think, Rosanna, you're happy with that? Yes.
Just want to compliment to what Thiago has just mentioned, because under PACAM, well, you have touched upon a very important point here, the permanence issue, actually. And somehow, I don't know if you've got a chance to look at the recently approved standard by PACAM supervised body on addressing the reversal risk, which is what we are exactly talking about, in which all these options that you have mentioned, including putting credits in the buffer pool, thinking about having other mechanism to address the reversal, like, you know, insurance and all, has duly been considered. So just to let the stakeholders know that it has already been under consideration in PACAM, and a very important tool came out at the 17th meeting of the supervisory body. So PACAM is moving in that direction to address all those issues that you've highlighted.
Thanks for the question. I would consider the technology you mentioned, the biochar, or whether it's BECCS or TECS, are still emerging technologies. I guess if learning from other emerging technologies lessons, I guess it's always harder in terms of to prove your technologies to the market at the beginning. But on the other hand, there are great opportunities for you to pick the best project. I think that's kind of the key, because the cost for the projects based on geography, based on applications, quite wide. Ranging from perhaps from $100 US per ton up to $1,000 US per ton. So I guess picking the right projects perhaps is one key thing, especially you have pretty much all the opportunity to do so. I guess another piece of perhaps comments or advice, learning from working with the technologies as well, is government's actually quite supportive for the emerging technologies. So, but you know, because there are so many novel aspects, so the developers or researchers really have to work together with the governments to co-design, for example, to co-create the opportunities that you need, because you are the ones that who knows that best. No one else knows best. So that partnership not only is quite important, significant, if you want to really improve and trying to get the best out of your technology and opportunities.
Thank you. I think now, in the interest of time, we are really entering the last 8 minutes of this session. So I'm going to actually ask all panelists if you can briefly, kind of 1 minute, any sort of final thoughts that you want to add, and also, or if you prefer, what you see as a priority action on a COP of implementation, collaboration. What do you really say that we should be focusing on the next 12 months? But that will have to be briefly in the interest of time. So I don't know who wants to start, or Thiago, you want to start and we just move this way over, if that's okay? Good, over to you then.
As a government official of Brazil, our priority is to effectively implement our ETS, our emissions trading scheme. It was approved, the new law last December. We are in this implementation phase. And So we are in this huge effort to move ahead with the Brazilian emissions trading scheme. Part of this effort includes defining the methodologies that are accepted, including for removals, and that is also a point to connect with Article 6, because all the Brazilian ITMOs, for example, they need to be complying with these methodologies accepted for the Brazilian ETS. So this is a partnership between the Ministry of Finance, where I currently work, and the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And this is our priority right now, to establish this governance and also have the first bilateral agreements for advancing with these mechanisms and picking the solutions that are eligible for that. And removals is one of the potential areas for work.
Yes, I think, to the date, we really need all technology solutions to work to drive the climate action. But of course, saved is always the best solutions, like we said in energy efficiencies as well. So yes, although all the technologies are there, but if we don't need them, that's lots of costs saved as well, and better outcomes for the environment and for the society.
Yeah, I want to point out again, let's not miss the opportunity to address the development and the resilience issues for the poor communities. But definitely the way we have framed the solutions, the well-functioning of carbon markets is central. It's central for creating those revenues, carbon revenues that I mentioned before, for the communities, work with the community and build capacities so that the benefits can stay in the community. So we shouldn't lose track of the development. So I hear the voices of the developing countries talking about funding, etc. So the frameworks need to encompass these multiple goals that we have. The development goal is still a challenge. Clean cooking is still a challenge, and that can be addressed really together with CDR in afforestation, recuperation of degraded lands, etc., and creating livelihoods that will help address those issues of clean cooking, energy access, and resilience.
I think I'll say that regulatory framework should be prioritized. I think we are relying too much on Article 6, but that shouldn't be the case in my view. I think more incentives should come both from within the national governments, but also internationally. We should focus on coming up with such incentivizing mechanisms so that innovations can be funded properly to develop new technologies for CDR. And of course, I mean, Article 6 should be leveraged to bring finance and capital to invest in these technologies. That I think should be, in my view, focus on and priorities.
Thank you. Very, very quick. I think my final words is let's stop talking and let's implement. I think we've been chatting, and things are not actually, for me, is not actually moving at the speed that we need. So let's implement. Implementation is the key word. It's not for nothing that this COP is the implementation COP. We have everything that we need to go forward. And we are not going because we are stuck in kinds of discussions that actually is more geopolitical than climate or anything else. So perhaps I'm being a little bit naive here, but let me be. That I would really like to get countries to get to a common agreement, how to implement Article 6, common agreement on CDR, and let's move forward, let's implement. The climate's not waiting for us.
Thank you very much. And that actually brings us to the end of the 60 minutes that we have today. So I want to close by thanking also Liz and Rana for their contributions at the beginning of the session, and all the panelists as well, all the audience, and also, of course, to UNFCCC, UNIDO, and SDSN who have sponsored the session, and for SEED for actually give us the opportunity to engineers to have a voice as well in the discussions. So thank you very much, and hope you enjoy the rest of the COP. Thank you.